Okay, it's going to become quite obvious that I am not a YouTuber by my obvious lack of a setup, but Callum, Mike 0, Mike Charlie X-Ray, the DX Commander, has issued a challenge. He's called it the 20-meter emergency vertical challenge, I suppose. And basically, he's saying, come up with some ideas for a junk drawer quarter wave vertical. And I thought, well, I have a lot of junk. If it's one thing I have is treasures collected over many years, and so this is the time. So I thought I would start with what I got from his video as a set of requirements. So basically, it's a 20-meter vertical with that would mean basically almost 5 meters, about 5 meters of a vertical element, and some number of radials fed with some coax. Some of the points that Callum had mentioned was it should be junk drawer parts, or at least no ham parts. I'm going to interpret that in such a way as to say that eventually it's got to get to a transceiver through some feed line. And so I'm not going to hack the end off of one of my feed lines, so I'm going to at least think that my connector will have a BNC or an SO239 or something, which arguably could be a ham part, but at some point it's got to make a match to the feed line. He has indicated it should be packable and be able to break down to some extent and be portable and deployable. And part of that means that the radials probably have to be disconnectable as well. He's put a limit on approximately 2 wavelengths worth of radials, and he suggested in sets of about 4 bundles or so. And all of this, I believe, should be somewhat waterproofed. Nothing's truly waterproof, but to the extent possible, it should be waterproof. So the way I approached this is I kind of thought, well, what would I start as something I could use as the element, the radiating element? And something that I've got far too much of is collections of RG, what is that, 6, I guess, cable TV coax, 75 ohm stuff, and not great for radio necessarily in all cases, but it could make a pretty good element if I either ignored the center and just used the shield as the radiating element, or even shorted them together. Not sure. Other possibilities for element or radials, in fact, might be various power supply cables that I have. You'd have to strip them out maybe and take the conductors out of them. I have here I have some telephone wire, various Ethernet cables and patches. So I kind of think I have something in there that I could make my radiating element out of. Honestly, I'm leaning towards the cable TV coax because I've got so much of it. It comes with a easily disconnectable end. And the 75 ohms, I'm not using it as a transmission line, so that's not going to enter into it. Because I'm not making it as a transmission line, the characteristic impedance isn't going to be at all a problem. So I think in there somewhere, likely the cable TV is my vertical element. Let's see, radials. Well, some method of attaching radials. I kind of thought I liked this idea at first, but now I think it might maybe terrify me a little bit. I have these, everybody has a collection of these, and you might be able to plug in just 1520 or 15.5, whatever they are, plugs into these, and then they are all bussed together on one side or the other. You could short them and that could be a detachable radial field. My fear is that as soon as you plug anything into these things, the chance that you're then going to use it on a wall plug, that frightens me a little. So I kind of, despite the nice, convenient way of connecting those, I kind of think that that's not a great idea. Of course, on the idea of sockets, I have these that I collected out of e-waste bins. They're from an old Ethernet patch cable, Cat5, so not so much great anymore. But they would be a pretty okay method of attaching and detaching a radial field. You could split this out into its 4 twisted pairs or 8 conductors, and maybe that's a way to go. But this might be a little bit harder to put into a self-contained unit that you could then easily waterproof or such. So I'm not so sure about that, but it's a possibility there. Let's see, what other parts did I look at? I mean, the radials, there's something you can do there with the Ethernet cables, possibly, or just other conductors that you strip out of whatever that bundle of cable I have. So moving beyond radials, gotta have some sort of a hub at the bottom that you could pull this all together. So, and that's where the waterproofing comes in. And I'm kind of going to an old standby, various bits of plumbing parts that I've accumulated and used for various things. These ones were drilled out to make a coil at one point in time that has outlived its usefulness. Some end caps you could maybe glue into place. Speaking of that, glue sticks, hot glue sticks, and other sort of various connectors, ties to tie this all together. But now you've got to have some idea of how I'd get through that with a set of connectors of some variety. So back into my box of junk, I found this that never really got used. I think I got it in a junk drawer bin at a store because this connector was broken out. These are actually fairly decent audio jacks, banana plug or screw down. It actually was complete with the 4th missing spot. It was just a missing spot. So I think I picked this up out of a junk drawer for $1 or something like that. I can't remember. But what that got me thinking of is this would be a pretty good thing to drill in to 4 locations here. And those would be convenient for connecting my radials. Of course, the radials could be connected just from stripped wire, or again from my junk drawer, local discount everything store, Princess Auto, has these types of little connectors that I use. So along those lines, and along the lines of well, if I'm going to go with the cable TV option, cable TV coax option, I was kind of thinking these sort of have built in this, and I've misplaced it now. Oh, there we are. Splitters, grounding blocks, 300 ohm to 75 ohm transformers, broadcast transformers. These have, and this one has a quick connect even, which may come in handy. I'm not sure yet. But, there's some options here. I'm kind of liking the idea of doing something with this grounding block, though, because this whole bit is attached electrically with a screw for the grounding lug. So I could conceivably do something along the lines of a coax screws into here, and now my radiating element could be attached to here, because this is attached to the shield, and that runs up a post or a tree, hangs from a tree or some such rapid deployment scenario. My backyard has got it's not long enough for a full 20 meters, but maybe I could run it up as high as possible and then come over in an inverted L. for that for my backyard, or I could throw it up in a tree that's sufficiently high for 20 meters. So that's kind of the thought. I'm kind of leaning um, towards that. Now this is a little big to fit inside this, of course. Hacksaw could cut this down to a point that fits. You know, something like this into the cap, cut off on top of a piece of pipe that could then be hot glued for some level of waterproofing. And then, of course, we got to get a connection to the feed line. So I have a couple of options there. Let's see, a little bit of space. Some options are I have this, which was rescued from some e-waste. It's just a little BNC feeder. This could come up the other end of the cap, and it could make a connection, a tip to the shield here, which will become the radiating element, and the shield off to my sets of banana jacks for connecting up my removable radials. It's kind of what I'm leaning towards. However, another option, if this is too ham radio-y, I don't think so, because it actually came off some scientific equipment that there we go, some notifications for you. It actually came off a piece of scientific equipment that I rescued from e-waste, but I have another option here, which I might be able to use, might be more packable, arguably. Again, it's off of some test equipment that I rescued from e-waste, and it's just a made-up harness from a BNC to the tip and the sleeve, broken out into these banana clips. So of course, if this was my radial connector, I could use it to just clip on in the field. And then if this was out the top with the cable TV coax attached to it, I could just clip on to anywhere there. And so that could conceivably be another way to go. And of course, then this end would just hook up to my feed line, and I would go from there. So there are a bunch of options here. Let's see, a little bit of extra stuff I have. I have various clips that I can call on. I have bits of rope I can use, and of course, electrical tape. So I think out of this mess of junk, I think I can probably come up with something that I would feel okay submitting to Callum for his consideration. And if I can manage it, if the weather allows, I'd also like to do a follow-up of an activation, maybe a POTA activation in the park on 20 meters with whatever I come up with. So with that, I am going to get on with mocking something up, and hopefully we'll return with something I can show. All right, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.